This is one I don't share out. I only share it to the people who are at the webinar itself because you may be talking about things that are personal to you. Today's plan. Again, you have the slides. I sent you the slide set. This is what we're doing today. We're going to talk about what a teaching philosophy statement is, what it should say, and we're going to review that brainstorming worksheet that I gave you. What I'm going to have y'all do is have a little bit more time to kind of reflect back on it, and then we're going to go into groups and have y'all talk within disciplinary groups about what you wrote. And there's more to this, which obviously, of course there is. So it's all very beneficial to you. You'll see why in just a little bit. And then we'll talk about what y'all wrote as a larger group. Then we'll go into the actual writing of your initial kind of thesis statement, the opening paragraph, that opening salvo, you might say, and then get into outlining and structuring. And that's about all the time you have in an hour and a half. And then we'll talk about next and future steps, some conventions, and then a bunch of other resources that I have available for you. So lots to do today. First of all, give yourself a pat on the back because you're here. You're doing something that is really important. It's very important for you in your career development, in your professional development, as well as, of course, your job application documents that you're going to be doing. And so it's important that you take the time to do this. And that's why this is a working webinar, because it forces you to sit down and get something out. And once you have a start, once you have that starting point and you've done that thinking and reflecting, you can move forward. So this is a really good thing that y'all are here today. So I'm curious, where are y'all in your degree? And what types, for those of you who have started looking at the job market or are on the job market, what are some of the statement types that you have seen requested, whether it's a teaching statement, 1-page, 2-page, combination statement and diversity statement? Maybe you haven't seen anything yet, that's fine. So go ahead and put that in the chat, where you are in your degree, what stage you are, and what kind of statements you have seen requested. So what is it? Early, just playing ahead? Excellent, absolutely. And a good thing about that is you can start thinking about what you need to think about. So that's awesome. PhD statement of research, yep. ABD, awesome, one more year left. On the job market, teaching statements, general, requested separate from the diversity statement, yep. Sometimes a separate research statement, yep. Doctoral, coming in fast. 1-page teaching philosophy statement of research interest. When I get to the talk about talking about this formatting, remind me about the 1-pager because I have something to say about that. Statement of research, don't have a statement yet, second year. ABD in the fall, applying to the PhD, awesome. Finishing your first year, teaching research DEI, 2 years, just trying to learn more, awesome. Switching major, awesome. Seeing all sorts of statements, yes, preparing for the future, on the market, excellent. Okay, second year PhD. So we've got a really broad array of people. That is awesome, and that really helps for the conversations that we're going to have. So I'm very happy to see that. Okay, so let's talk about what that statement of teaching philosophy is. It should, as you've already done that reflection and thinking, it should explain your teaching beliefs and approach. And we'll come back to this a lot. It's about you. It's not about what teaching is. It's not like you're going to read a book on what is higher education teaching. It is very personalized to you, your experiences, how you do things, and why. So what is your concept, your conception of teaching and learning? It is not absolute statements. I have done a lot of editing of people's teaching statements. I did read one, and it was from a College of Education student. So I wasn't too surprised, but it read like a textbook. And I was like, no, you need to go back and think about it from your perspective. So not definitions, not absolute statements. It should outline your innovative techniques, your practices that you do that are effective. And so really you want to describe how you teach. What is the way that you teach, the practices that you do, the techniques, the methodologies that you use, and the justification for why you do it. And you may be thinking, well, because it works. Well, that's the point of the reflection is, why does it work? And as you teach more, you become you recognize better why things work the way they do, because you become more familiar with pedagogy, which is the practice, the study of teaching. And this statement helps show that you have been reflective and purposeful about the choices that you make and why you do the things that you do in your teaching. So you're going to provide specific examples. That's very key. Now, you may say, I haven't had much experience yet. That's okay. Even if, say, you graduate, you have a degree, you haven't done a lot of teaching in the classroom, there are other types of experiences that do kind of fit into the teaching mold, like tutoring, mentoring. So those are things you can talk about. But you can also talk about, if I were to teach this course, this is what I would do. Because when you're applying for jobs, there's such a wide range of experiences of people who apply. So say you haven't taught a particular course, you can say how you would teach it. So showing examples of what you do in the classroom, what the learning looks like in your students. You should have these examples, these anecdotes, but you can have too many. You need to have a couple of 2 or 3 key anecdotes that really kind of point out several of the reflective comments that y'all were thinking about in the worksheet. We'll get to that as well. How you incorporate pedagogical theory. Now, some of you are like, we have a lot of education folks here, which is great, but some of y'all say, I am not in the College of Education. How do I know what it is that I'm doing? So one of the resources that I gave y'all was a document that I put together and I keep updating, called a primer on the types of teaching and learning strategies, practices, and pedagogy. So if you look at this list, so you can see this list here, and if you scroll down, you see a description of what all these pedagogies are, what they do, how they work, why they're important, lots of links to learning more about them. And the reason why I put this together is because graduate students, postdocs, adjuncts, if you're not in education, you may not be familiar with these terms, but it doesn't mean you're not doing them in the classroom. So you are probably doing experiential learning. You're probably doing active learning, peer learning, case method teaching. So know that there are phrases, there's words, the pedagogies of what it is that you're doing in the classroom. So if you're not familiar with these, go look through this and see what it is that you are doing and say, oh, there's a phrase for that. That's awesome. So make sure you use that. That's an important resource for y'all. Now, related to that, don't name drop. And what I mean by that is, if you see, active learning, case study, case-based methods, inquiry-based, you can have too much of that peppered through that really just feels like you just threw those in there to make it sound like you know what you're doing. And I say that just because you do know what you're doing, but you've got to be careful that you're not trying to be to over impress, if that makes any sense. You want to make sure that you describe what you do in the classroom, not I do active learning, but what does it look like? How do you do it? What do the students do? Okay. Also, it's very important that you show how your teaching style, your technique, the methods that you use is grounded in your discipline. And what I mean by that is that every type of discipline has a particular pedagogy that works for it. Teaching in marine science, for example, would be a different way of teaching than perhaps that you would teach in criminal justice, for example. Every discipline has its pedagogy journal. So there are journals of how to teach in your discipline, in business, in, of course, education, in public health. And so if you want, and I have a couple of websites and lists of pedagogical journals in multiple disciplines, I'll send that resource to y'all. And you can start exploring what all is out there. And you may see that some of what you're doing actually likely already has peer-reviewed research that backs up why it works for your discipline. So it's good that you can actually show that. And again, y'all are in the beginning stages of your career, so you may not be familiar with that, but take some time to start becoming familiar with it, because it will really serve you well later. So your teaching philosophy should answer these questions basically. We talked about more. We will talk about more. Why do you teach? what it is that you teach, not necessarily discipline, but do you teach other things like skills, communication, relationships, and working well with others? There's all sorts of things that you may actually be teaching in class that when you reflect on it, you recognize that you are. How do you do it? Is there particular pedagogies? Are there techniques? What are things that you do in the classroom to make sure students feel welcome, that making it a positive classroom environment? And then how well do you know it's working? How do you measure its effectiveness? So this goes towards things like assessments, what types of assessments that you use, how students respond to what you do in the classroom, all sorts of different things. So you can see there's a lot you can put into this teaching statement. And one of the reasons for this workshop is to help you figure out what you value most. And that's what you're going to focus on, because these statements should not be more than about 2 pages. And so you may have a lot written. You're like, there's no way I can fit it all in 2 pages. No, you can't. So you've got to make some judicious decisions as to what you do want to talk about. So basically, if someone stepped into your classroom, watched you teach, what would that then look like? And so your teaching statement should generally describe that reflectively, with understanding of why it works, how it works, that sort of thing. Okay. So what I want to do, this next step is kind of making sure you have responses to those questions. I want you to go ahead and take about 10 more minutes to finish reflecting and brainstorming, maybe write some more thoughts down using the worksheet that I gave you. While y'all are doing that, I'm going to be putting y'all into groups. That's a good question. And difference between teaching statement and teaching philosophy, they're kind of one and the same, but sometimes you may be asked to do a teaching statement that addresses the expectations of the job. So that might be a little bit more practical than this is why I teach what I do, what I teach, what I look for, what is learning, what is teaching type of thing. But they really kind of are very similar, but just watch for the phrasing and wording in the requests, and that might help you to discern how philosophical you get in the teaching statement. Okay, great question. So what I'm going to be doing for you guys is you are going to be going into groups. And so in those groups, you're going to be talking about those 10 questions and what you wrote about them. So I really want y'all to hear what other people say who may be in your discipline or in an adjacent discipline, what you say about these 10 questions. Now, you may not get through all the questions. I'm going to give you about 25 minutes to do it. And what I'm going to do is have y'all, as you go through those questions, you're going to be entering them in this file that I'm sending to y'all. You should be able to edit it. Everyone go ahead and click on that. And once you get to that, I want to show you how this works. What we see is that if you look down at the bottom down here, these are the 10 questions. If you click on these 3 little bars, you can go to individual questions. Okay, so when you go to your groups, talk about each of these questions and then put in not only what your response is, but really importantly, what your department is, because you're going to see what other departments say at the same time that you have your own response. So if you can, what I'm going to do, so it's 12:30-ish right now, what I'm going to do is give you guys about 25 minutes to go through what you can. If you can at least get through, say, question 4 or question 5, that's awesome, truthfully, but go through what you want to as a group, talk about what you want, and again, really important that you record y'all's responses into this document with your department, share with each other, talk about it, kind of hear what different perspectives are, different departments, disciplines, different people, different experiences, what they think about those questions, okay? All right, so the groups just ended. I wish there was an easier way to tell y'all it was about to end, but Blackboard doesn't have that functionality, unfortunately. So I appreciate I heard lots of voices as everybody was adding back in. So y'all are now in the main room. I hope that y'all got a good amount of chatting done. Y'all have put a lot into the webpage, which is great. We're going to talk about what some of the things that y'all put in there. So one of the things I wanted to do before we get to what y'all talked about is let me ask you, first of all, which of those questions was the hardest one to write about of those 10 questions? What do you think was harder, more difficult to reflect on than others? 9 and 10, yep. 2, 9, yep. 9, that's interesting. 10, 6, too many methods, yeah, for sure. And so that's why you want to think about, so which one should I talk about? 9, I think with the number 10, when you do the diversity statement, that might also help you to kind of visualize whether you want to talk about, say, question number 10 in your diversity statement or in your teaching, or how you might want to divvy that up. So that's a really good point. Let's see, number 2, 9, 10, excellent. All right, so let's look at what some of y'all wrote. So question number 1, what is teaching? So delivering content meant to improve the learner's skills, and I'm just going to pick through, and competencies for problem solving through critical thinking. Wow, excellent. Mentorship, fostering deeper understanding of epidemiological concepts, being able to relay information in a way that resonates with my audience. It's an opportunity to extend my own knowledge about a topic and encourage students to engage with the material, both inside and outside the classroom. See, facilitating students' learning, guiding my students' learning of new knowledge, sharing the knowledge, being a model for desirable behavior, facilitation of knowledge and skills with the aim of nurturing understanding and growth, creating an environment where students feel supported and motivated. So this is all what teaching is. Demonstrate the knowledge and methodology through a specific course. All right, what learning is: active, engaging process where they acquire new skills, knowledge, and understanding. Being able to engage with the material and apply it to practical examples. Excellent. It's not just about getting the subject, but it's learning strategies which that can be applied to everyday experiences. Let's see. Usually looks like applying the knowledge when they have learned in lecture to hands-on activities. Use communication tactics to have group discussions. Excellent. Let's see. Inquiry, research, reflection, adjustment, applying logic. Wow. Significant and visible change in behavior and knowledge achieved by progressive exposition of what is intended to teach. Awesome. So some people, and I'm not necessarily the best person in writing really good phrases, I have to really work through it. So sometimes it's just really wonderful to see how people word things. And that's why I'm having y'all look at what other people write. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second as well. Why do you teach? Or get your passion for teaching? Part of my contract, however, I am passionate about it because I've seen firsthand how I have the ability to make a difference in my students' lives. I try to be there for my students because I didn't always feel like I had someone to guide me or who was cheering me on when I was an undergrad. Awesome. Let's see. Had to learn about, I teach to learn more about my field and myself. Culture in my classroom is one of collaboration. It's important for me to help students feel more confident about their abilities. Awesome. I come from a family of educators who sparked my love of learning from a young age. I might be able to help people understand themselves, others, and possibly the world. So awesome. All right, number 4, what do you value? Exchange of ideas, being able to challenge your own thinking. Important for me to remain open to all perspectives. I value making connections with my students and getting to know them as individuals. I value drawing real world connections between course content and their lived experiences. I think everyone approaches ideas differently, and using these different approaches is how breakthroughs are made. So being able to assist in the next generation of understanding and fostering interest is very rewarding for me and hopefully positively impacts the students. Awesome. It's not always about academic, however, put value and attitude to someone else's behavior that can be, let me wrap that, their integrity. Academic study somehow is a nightmare for some students, however, by delivering in a good manner can be a different perspective, absolutely. Chance to do better in a system steeped in institutionalized discrimination and to help students, especially those who face unique challenges, achieve their goals. Awesome. Symbiotic relationship, that's so cool. Yes, absolutely. Number 5, I hope my students come out at the end of the semester. So this is what are your goals? Not just with the sense that they've learned something they didn't know, but that they can feel assured and confident in their ability to truly comprehend. Awesome. Let's see, to not only understand material, but see how it relates to their desired field and develop that connection. Nice. Tools. Give them the tools that will motivate and encourage them to be more committed in their learning. No more leaving the classroom than when they came into it. Yeah. Applying sociological concepts. Excellent. Enjoy learning. Take away attitude, skills, and knowledge that they can use to meet goals in other facets of their lives. So cool. Collaborate and create new products. Number 6. So the tools that you use: experiential learning, inquiry-based learning, active learning, different modalities, discussion-based. Yep, excellent. Let's see, how do you interact and engage? Openness with your students, small group settings, respectfully. It's a little disappointing how often I hear they are talked down to elsewhere. Yes. Creating that positive and supportive learning environment where they feel comfortable expressing themselves. Let's see, active communication, asking questions. Yes. So you can see you can kind of have a different response here based on your perspective of how you read the question initially. And that's why we have you hear other people's perspectives. And not that anything's right or wrong. Number 8, how do you assess work? Formative assessments, varieties of methods. Let's see, how does your research influence your teaching? And then I'm going to show you the last one. How's your background influence your teaching? So the reason why I have you go through these questions is because of where we're going in the next step. But before we do that, let me show you something else. So I have been doing this workshop for about 5 or 6 years now. When I first started doing this workshop, this webinar, I was like, oh, I don't want people to see what other people have wrote, because I don't want them to, plagiarize or copy paste. Well, after some experience with that, I was like, you know what? We need to hear what other people say. You need to hear other people's thoughts, how they write things, how they word things, how they phrase things, And so what I have done with this document, this is a living document. So if you scroll down on each of those 10 questions, you will see a whole bunch of other comments from past workshops over about the last 2 or 3 years. So that's why I said put your department in that, so that you can go and scroll down then and see what other departments say, but also others in your department. So other epidemiology, business, health, electrical engineering. Hello. Why do you teach? If you scroll down, international business, music, geography. This is something for you to explore later on. And what I think it does, what I think it helps you do, is to really help to verbalize and get that verbiage that you're looking for to get out your ideas and figure out what it is that you want to say. Okay. So again, this is a living document. I do not close it. You will always have access to it. So just put a bookmark so that you can come back to that. So that document is yours to do with as you please. Just don't delete anything that's in there. So now you have those 10 questions. Now what I want you to do, this is hard, look over the responses to your questions. Which one or ones are the most important to your teaching, your philosophy, your perspective? So look through those and circle or highlight, however you've got the format. Circle the one that is most important to you. So I'll give you about a minute to look through your responses and choose that one. And you can put into the chat which one you choose, or ones if you have a couple that kind of tie together. 10. Okay. 7, 4, 6, 10. 3, 10. Why do you teach? Yep. What do you value? 6. Okay. What are your favorite methods? Yep. 1, 2, 3, 9. Research. 5. Goals. Excellent. You interact. Awesome. 6, 7, 3, and 8. 7, 3, 7. Excellent. With that choice, and of course you may change your mind or you may modify it. That's totally fine. This is a working document. Think about, what does that choice that you made, what does that indicate about your teaching? So what I want you to do now is, you have that document I sent to y'all today. So you've already answered these questions, you've already circled it. Now what I want you to answer is, what does this indicate about your teaching? So I want you to reflect on that comment that you chose that was the most important or valuable to you, and then try to synthesize it, summarize. Maybe you had several, so if you chose two or three different ones, synthesize those into an opening statement or an opening synopsis. Kind of synopsize what you wrote there, because I know several of y'all wrote lots of stuff, so synopsize that into a synthesis of what it is that you value most, that's most important to you. So you're going to want to synopsize it into something that you're going to be putting into the document as part of the document. So writing out a couple of statements, writing out a couple of introductory sentences. This is going to become your thesis statement of the document. What you're writing basically is going to become, or is becoming, your central thesis idea of the document. So this synopsis that you're putting together, that you're phrasing, will help you to develop that introductory statement, paragraph, whatever it might be, that brings in what you brainstormed as your most important value. And so this basically is what we call foregrounding. This highlights your main thesis, your main idea, which is your important values, or what drives how you teach and why you teach, in that opening paragraph. And then your subsequent paragraphs can then support that statement and bring in the other aspects that you also value and want to mention in your statement. As you're developing that synopsis statement, start thinking about how do I start out the actual document itself. So you may be that your synopsis is the way to start it out, but what I want to do in this section here is kind of give you an idea of other ways to maybe open the document. So here is an example starter sentence that might use an aspect, whatever aspect you consider most important. So this is just an example. By looking at my what, we see what about my teaching, which is important because what. So this kind of brings in 2 or 3 of those different questions that I would have valued the most. Again, this is just an example starter statement. Yours probably does look different. Let me show you what I did a long time ago. And it still kind of is my philosophy. By looking at how I incorporate a variety of teaching techniques, and some of y'all mentioned that, how you teach. I'm going to talk about how I teach and why I do that. So we see that student engagement through multiple modes of learning and interaction with me and other students is key to my teaching, which is important because today students do not learn the way I did. They learn better by doing, engaging, interacting. So that's not the best sentence, but you got to get those ideas out. So don't worry about perfect sentence grammar structure. Get those ideas out. So this was using that starter statement instead of synopsizing it. You have in your resource packet, pages 1 through 3, you have some more example starter statements. So if this helps you to synopsize your values and ideas, use them. See if there's one that you particularly like that's better than others. So in that packet that I gave y'all, you have some composition examples, engineering examples, chemistry, history, tutoring example starter statements, synopsis, and then this is what I just posted in the PowerPoint, some starter phrases. So what I want you to do, if you're not already doing that, is to do that now. Develop that introductory thesis statement, that starting synopsis, using those values, using the synopsis, the summary that you did, your reflection, your brainstorming, and use those statements as needed. So go ahead and in the space that I provided, question number 4, start writing your introductory thesis statement, or statements, or sentences, or first paragraph, 3 sentences, whatever it is. And again, if your synopsis is fine, use it. That, again, those templates are just there for you. So I want you to do this now. Get those ideas out now. They may be just blurbs and phrases, but get that out. Get it on paper. Let's see. Modeling desirable behavior is the core of what I teach my students. Model good word habits, courtesy, and good citizenship by showing students how to achieve both academically and socially. Both academically and socially. I know they will have a good start for their own path through life. Very cool. I believe by inspiring integrity, compassion, and perseverance in our students, we empower resilient, well-rounded learners and leaders for whom no achievement is impossible. Oh, that's so beautiful. Heart. That's so awesome. Y'all are such good writers. I continued in the education sector with a professional helping capacity to affect change and promote liberation by cultivating communities of wellness. Awesome. Now, remember, y'all may be thinking, some of y'all may be thinking, I don't write that way. You write the way you write. You write how you want the phrasing to say. You can go back and look at how others have maybe phrased something that you were trying to get out and kind of incorporate some of how that phrasing was used. But this needs to be your document. So don't never ever compare yourself to others. This needs to have your voice of what your teaching philosophy is. Expertise and authority in the field of study requires both delegation and collaboration to develop different levels of intelligence as well as many intelligence types as well. Yep. And again, get the ideas out. You're going to do so many revisions after today, which is the way it's supposed to be. I believe that building a good relationship with my students inspires them to learn, engage, and come to class ready to learn. Good relationships are the key for the student's mind. Awesome. Yeah, and that's something that came from the silver lining from the pandemic is how important relationships are between the instructor and the students within the class. See, collaborative learning experiences and exposure to new viewpoints are priorities for me in the classroom. Working together with my students to create a classroom culture based on respect and shared values is key. I do my best to develop classes where students facing a variety of challenges and different backgrounds feel welcome in my classroom and have the support they need to achieve their goals. Awesome. Okay, so if you're still writing, keep going. I want to go ahead and move forward. Now, the next question is, you want to still incorporate some of that other stuff that you wrote. So what else is also important for you to include? So those other answers, those other 10, the answers to those 10 questions, which in turn are most important to you that you want to include in the statement. So start ranking those answers, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 through 6, whichever ones you want to try in some way to incorporate into that 1 or 2 page statement. So that's question number 5. So go ahead and do that now. And so now in that document, you can list them out. If you're, in Word, you can move them around, successfully list out those responses and see, do they flow through a logical working outline? Rearrange as needed for connection and flow. Does it go from one to another? Do you see how you can write going from technique to engagement or from values to techniques, that sort of thing? So do that for number 6. So some people really like to outline first. I do what we call reverse outlining, where I write a whole bunch of stuff out. Does it flow? And then start moving things around. And so I actually outline what I wrote and see if the outline makes sense. So that's another way to kind of think about structure. And then you just go back and move things around. Personal teaching philosophy takes into account every student's prior education experience is unique. Future goals are unique, and curriculum objectives can and should be modified to include numbers 1 and 2. Absolutely. Yep. So list out those top 3 or 4 into a working outline, move them around, maybe see if they connect well or not. See how else you might bring things into the discussion to lead from one to the other. So it's a very cool way of thinking about structure and flow and voice and how it sounds in the document. So what questions have popped up so far before we get on to a couple of the expectations and resources? What uncertainties, questions so far? I may be answering some of them in the next section. We'll go ahead and go on to next steps, future steps. Formatting expectations, up to 2 pages, single space. The very first teaching statement I ever wrote was back in 2000, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It was 4 pages long. Do not do that. I don't think they ever read it. There are 1-pager variations, and 1-pagers are harder to write. So it really is a bam, bam, bam. This is important, this is important, this is important. And so when you write 1-pagers, if you're writing a 1-pager, email me, and I can kind of help you with that, because it is a little bit different than obviously a 2-pager single space. It says, is it appropriate to express challenges I might have had in the classroom and how I overcame them? Yes. So if you have had challenges, don't just, like you said, don't just mention challenges, but how did you overcome them? And talk about how it changed your perspective. I think that's an important part. I think that's a great way to show how your philosophy has changed over time. I also do a workshop for faculty, and in the faculty one, I talk about how you, where you are in your career, you need to talk about perhaps how your philosophy has changed over time, because now you're moving from, you know, an early career teacher to mid-career to later career. How has your philosophy changed and why? So absolutely talk about that. It should be first person narrative style, but there should be structure. It should be a structure outlined. It should not be stream of consciousness. Don't let it be that way. Should have normal font sizes, normal margins. I edited one that was like 11-point font and 0.3 margins. Don't do that. It's obvious that you're trying to fit it all in. You need to cut and slash. Headings and bullets. I get this question a lot. Headings, it depends. I'm going to show you some examples of what headings look like. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Do not do bullets. It's very unprofessional looking. I've seen some, it just does not look good. Make sure, and I have highlighted this and starred it, tailor it to the institution. This is key, and you're going to do this if you have the diversity statement as well. In that job description, they're going to tell you what types of courses you'll be teaching, if not specific, general. What types of courses, discussions, labs, whatever. Tailor your statement to speak to how you teach those types of courses, maybe even that particular class itself. If you say, they say that you're going to teach geomorphology, if you don't have geomorphology teaching experience, talk about how the courses you have taught have given you the experience to be able to teach that type of course. And then tailor it to the departmental expectations and course offerings, like I just said, and also with the type of institution. We talk about this more in the diversity statement, but if you're applying to a small private 2-year, 4-year college, or you're applying to a R1 institution or a predominantly Hispanic or an HBCU, thinking about what type of institution you're going to, how can you fold in those demographics into your teaching statement and how you would teach to that particular institution type and student body. And I know that that does mean you're going to be having to do and individually tailor these to every application, but you have to anyway, so make sure it's really good. I still have several things I want to show you, but your next steps after this is over today, go write for 10 more minutes, just 10, set a timer, do the Pomodoro technique, 15 minutes. Just don't worry about sentence structure, word structure, just get those ideas out. Go back and look at that, Google Documents, see what others have said. So I love these quotes. First drafts don't have to be perfect. They just have to be written. The water does not flow until the faucet is turned on. That is so true. Bullets are not good. It looks very unprofessional. It looks like drafts. It looks like notes. So I would not, absolutely don't use bullets. And like I said, I'm going to show you some examples in a second. Do note that the document that you have now will rarely be what your final document is. And y'all who have written lots of stuff know this. That's the way writing works. So just start writing from your key values and synopsis. Let that basically shape itself. Okay. Now, after your first draft, I've given y'all some rubrics, of course. Do look at if there's a clear direction claim. Do the paragraphs flow? Other ways to organize it. Connection between theory and practice. So once you have that written, have a look at the packet that I gave you, and I've got several rubrics in there for you of how to kind of assess how well you've written it or what you've written. As you revise, you're going to have several, this is important, several different sets of documents, several different versions. Keep every one, especially say you apply to one institution that's very different from the other. You may say these 2 paragraphs don't work for this one. Do not delete them and get rid of them. Put them into a document that is a file called good writing and save that, because you've just taken time to craft it. Maybe you're not using it for this particular job application, but you might use it elsewhere and you won't remember what you wrote. So keep all of your versions in some way because it may be better suited elsewhere. Work on it a little each week. Even if you think it's finished, always, always, always have someone else read it. Very, very important. If you have a document, you put it together, if you want me to provide feedback, read it and edit it, I will do that, but you have to provide me a full first draft, okay? So some resources I want y'all to look at. Page 8 in your packet. This is a bunch of very good resources. What I've given here, some more ways of kind of reflecting, just different ways of looking at things you might be interested in doing. There's a teaching perspectives inventory, which is a really cool kind of quiz to see what your perspectives are. It's a neat thing to do. More reflective questions, and some links that take you to various examples, disciplinary examples. This link here is also in that resources packet, blog post on revising the statement after moving online in the pandemic. This is a cool thing to read because it talks about it. I think I also included it in your resource packet. If you have to develop a portfolio, there's lots of resources out there. I can send you some resources and links and guidance for those types of things as well. The other thing I'm going to send y'all is 2 large documents that are packets of, one of them is STEM teaching statements, and the other one is humanities, social sciences teaching statements. And so these are from just this gamut of experiences of TAs, some, first year faculty, some good, some bad, and I have annotated it to say, don't do this, do this. This is a great example of this. So I will send those to you in PDF form after our seminar today. So definitely have a look at those. A lot of those have been taken off the web, so I'm glad I grabbed them when I did. A couple more interesting sites. This was the one on political science graduate student crafting a stronger teaching statement, the narrative reflection on the actual process itself. That was really interesting. Let's see, and some other common mistakes. And also our writing center does help with editing that and drafting that. So do feel free to contact them to get feedback and comments on that. What questions y'all have? Any comments or questions or things I didn't answer? So can you come in the practice that summarizes teaching philosophy into 3 or 4 words and explain them?
Yes, I've seen like people write their teaching philosophy statements like they start with like summarizing their teaching philosophy into 3 words like respect, responsibility, and something like some other words. And then in the body paragraphs, they kind of explain what do they mean by respect, what responsibility, and so on and so forth. Like, how do you think this kind of organization?
So I have seen, and the examples I'm going to send y'all, you'll see some examples like that. So those basically are a type of header. And if it works for your document, great. Sometimes it's too hard to get it into 1 or 2 words or 3 words, and so you can't really do that very well. But if that's how yours kind of falls out, then do it that way, if that's the way that you like it. Because what those do is they bring the reader's eye to those 3 main types, and then that kind of helps them to understand where they're going and how the document flows. So headers, headings can work. It just depends on how the document is written. You just want to make sure that everything you put into that section is about what the header is. Great question.